In this paper, I will discuss how the Catalan composer Roberto Gerard included a political dimension in the music for Pandora, a ballet he composed between 1943 and 1944. In this work, Gerard quoted many popular songs, and the way he manages these quotations in the score add a political signification to the scenario of the ballet. I will start by briefly presenting the compositional context of Pandora, and I will continue by examining each popular song Gerard quoted in his ballet in order to show the political dimension of this work. Roberto Gerard was born in Valls, Catalonia in 1896. He began his musical studies with Philip Pedrell in Barcelona, and when his master died in 1922, he pursued his education under the tutelage of Arnold Schoenberg in Vienna. When he came back to his native Catalonia at the end of the 20s, Gerard soon became involved in politics. He was a member of the parliament in the Ministry of Culture alongside Eugénie Anglès, Paul Casals, and Jordi Rubio under the government of Francesc Macià. The political implication of Gerard in the Catalan Republic is reflected in his works in many ways. His strong interest in popular and folk music arose when he was studying with Philip Pedrell. In the 30s, it became a way to refer to the Catalan culture in his own work. The best example of that is certainly his ballet Soirée de Barcelone, which he started composing during the Spanish Civil War. This ballet is based on many Catalan traditions, quoted many folkloric tunes, and was intended to serve a propagandistic purpose, but he was never able to finish it because of the war. At the end of the conflict, Gerard fled to Great Britain, where he remained until his death in 1970. The first decade of his exile is marked by the composition of many ballets. One of them, Pandora, composed between 1943 and 1944, is strongly related to the political context of the 40s and especially to the Second World War. The scenario was written by the German choreographer Kurt Hughes, whose ballets were banned in Germany because of his critical point of view against the Third Reich. In Pandora, Hughes clearly denounced war, totalitarianism, and materialism. Gerard was commissioned to compose music for this argument, and he integrated many references to popular songs in the music. Gerard arranged the score in 5 versions, the first and second for 2 pianos and percussion, and the other 3 for orchestra. The last one, dating back to 1950, is a 5-movement suite. This is the version that I studied since it is the final version in which Gerard reestablished his message after the cuts Hughes made when the ballet was touring in the 40s. This 5-movement suite follows the narrative structure of the scenario, but focalizes the attention on the main characters as well as on the main events. To summarize the storyline, Pandora describes the search of humanity for an ideal to worship. In this quest, the people soon find a beauty queen, Pandora, and they choose her as their ideal. Among them, a young man, the youth, is not convinced by the morality of Pandora and decides to pursue his quest. He meets Psyche, a character that embodies the good in all humans. Even though the youth tries to draw humanity's attention to Psyche, he is rejected, leading to the crowning of Pandora. Her first gesture is then to open her box and release her monsters, ordering them to attack humanity. According to Hughes, these monsters represent the mechanization of war, echoing the situation that was observable during the Second World War. After the war episode, humanity is almost annihilated. The youth then reappears with Psyche. Together they defeat Pandora, and humanity is back to searching for an ideal. Gerard wrote that Pandora evokes affairs of our country in a letter to Ventura Gasol, Minister of Culture in Catalonia during the 30s. But how exactly does Pandora evoke affairs from Catalonia or Spain? As the musicologist Julian White shows in the 3 articles listed on the screen, Gerard cites many popular tunes in his music in general, and particularly in Pandora. In this ballet, Gerard uses 6 songs: Anton Pirulero, Rosa del Folio, Ad Mortem Ficinamos, Assassí per Amor, L'Emigrant, and La Germana Rescatada. White did extensive research listing the sources Gerard referred to in Pandora. In this paper, I will continue his work as I examine how Gerard uses these popular melodies to give a particular significance to the scenario written by Hughes. Examining each song individually, my analysis will focus on the origins and cultural references that they evoke, as well as the significance of their lyrics. Then, I will show how Gerard included them in his score and how the musical treatment of these quotations had a political significance to the ballet to recall the situation of Catalonia at the end of the 30s. The first song quoted by Gerard in Pandora is Anton Pirulero, a song for children accompanied by a game relating to memory and speed. To play, the children stand in a circle acting as if they were playing a musical instrument. Each player must play a different one. At some point, the leader of the game changes his fictitious instrument with another player, who must then recall the instrument played by the leader. If he fails, he must do a dare decided by the leader. The text of the song states clearly the authoritarian dynamic imposed by the leader of the game. In fact, the whole song can be interpreted as a threat of repression, which is particularly evocative regarding the storyline of Pandora, in which a queen is strengthening her power over the humanity. The melody based on this song appears in the first movement of the suite. To be more precise, it corresponds to the moment when the humanity believes to have found an ideal to worship in the character of Pandora. In the score, Gerard uses the principle of the game. The piano first introduces the melody, which is then relayed to the other instruments of the song. Let's listen to it. The threat carried by the song might seem harmless since it's a children's game, but it fits well with the intention of Pandora. She is trying to seduce the humanity by hiding her authoritarian tendencies. The crowd, that can be represented by the orchestra, is then fooled and follows blindly the queen, that can be personified by the piano. Thus, the examination of the text of the song, the musical treatment, as well as the moment of the storyline to which the quotation corresponds, shows that Jared's music emphasizes the storyline written by the choreographer. Moreover, the language used in this song is Castilian rather than Catalan. This fact is important because all the other songs quoted by Gerard are mainly in Catalan, with the exception of An Mortem Festinamus, which is in Latin. It is a particularity that could be regarded as if Gerard was trying to distinguish Pandora from the true hero of the ballet, the youth, which is symbolized in music through a Catalan song, as we will see right now. The second song Gerard cites is Rosa del Folio, a sardana composed by Joan Lamotte de Grigny. The sardana is a typical Catalan dance which is executed in a circle accompanied by a cobla. This musical ensemble is formed by a flavioli tamburi, two triples, two tenori, two cornetins, two fiscorns, a trombone, and a double bass, and is typical of Catalan folk music. Let's listen to a traditional version of Rosa del Folio played by a cobla. Gerard uses only an excerpt of the melody, shown in color on the screen. This passage corresponds to the verse and the first word of the chorus. The lyrics take the form of a dialogue between a young girl and a narrator. He asks her why she is sad, and she answers by complaining about the marriage that she's forced into. Gerard insists on the part of the song about the forced marriage, which communicates a sense of hopelessness. In Pandora, he transforms slightly the rhythm of the song by adding a dotted rhythm, but what is interesting here is that he tries to imitate the typical sound of the cobla within the orchestra by using wind instruments accompanied by the cellos and the double basses. Let's listen to it. The Rosa del Folio citation appears in the first part of the second movement, when the youth has already rejected humanity and Pandora in order to pursue his quest for an ideal. Throughout the ballet, the transformation of Rosa del Folio is used to introduce and symbolize the youth. The third song Gerard cites in Pandora is An Mortem Pestinamus, a religious piece about death taken from the medieval Libre Vermeil of Montserrat. The text of this song refers to the importance of doing good in order to avoid God's punishment, but it also insists on the fact that all humans are equal before death and nobody can tell when it will strike. As it is a dance, the rhythm of this song is energetic, as we can hear on this recording conducted by Jean Savard. In Pandora, Gerard presents the entire melody in a much slower tempo, which modifies completely the character of the song, as we can hear in this excerpt. The An Mortem Pestinamus citation is included in the second part of the second movement, which introduces the youth with the sardana Rosa del Fondo. An Mortem Pestinamus is thus associated with Psyche, the character that embodies the good in all humans. This song is a virelai, a medieval dance that might be the ancestor of the modern sardana, since it is a dance executed in circle, just like the sardana. The historic filiation existing between the sardana and the virelai offers an interesting interpretation and might explain why Gerard chose to use these particular songs, Rosa del Folio and An Mortem Pestinamus, to represent the duet formed by the youth and Psyche. The link between the past as an ideal and the present that should be the continuation of this past recalls the ideas of the Catalan Renaixença. This literary movement, started in the 19th century, is marked by an awakening of the nationalist awareness regarding the Catalan language, culture, and history. The medieval past of Catalonia was regarded as an ideal because of its relative independence from Spain. At the beginning of the 20th century, this national consciousness became the basis of the claims in favor of Catalonia's independence. The association of Psyche with the Catalan medieval song might have been a strategy Gerard uses to indicate that the ideal the youth finally finds is related to his past. Following this train of thought, it might be possible to associate the youth with a modern Catalan, and certainly a nationalist one, and Psyche, his ideal, with an idealized vision of Catalonia coming from the Middle Ages, in other words, with Catalonia's independence. This interpretation can be completed by another fact. Gerard's brother, Carlos Gerard, was in charge of the monastery of Montserrat during the Spanish Civil War. This place became an important symbol of the preservation of the democracy, as it was a place where many members of the Republican government were staying during the conflict. It seems probable that Gerard could have chosen to use a song from the Libre Vermeil as a way to evoke the preservation of democracy in Spain. Thus, the ideal embodied by Psyche could also be interpreted as the democracy, and the youth could be regarded as a Catalan trying to convince the humanity that democracy is a better ideal than the totalitarian Pandora, which was previously represented in music through a Spanish song. The next song quoted in Pandora is Assassí per amor. This song tells the story of a man killing the girl he loves because she didn't reciprocate his feeling. The text is centered on the disrespect of the girl's free will, leading to a violent end, the murder. It is interesting to note that it is not the first time Gerard uses this song. In fact, Asasi per Amor was cited in his previous ballet, Don Quixote, composed between 1940 and 1941, where it symbolized the character of Dulcinea. Although it might look like Gerard's Don Quixote is based on Cervantes' novel, Gerard was rather inspired by El Català de la Mancha, a play by Santiago de Lusignan. There is an obvious Catalanist lecture of the original Don Quixote in this play, as is indicated in the title. As Leticia Sanchez de Andres shows, there are notes in Gerard's diaries that indicate that he was thinking about composing an opera based on that play. He finally chose to compose a ballet, and he based his work on the original version of Cervantes, but he adapted the end of the story to serve his interpretation based on the play by Rossignol. What we should remember here is that Gerard Don Quixote might be regarded as a Catalanist work that reinterpreted the classic Don Quixote by presenting the errant knight as a Catalan and a Republican. His ideal, Dulcinea, could therefore be associated with the Republic. The fact that Gerard recycled the citation of Asasi per Amor in Pandora is certainly not trivial and suggests that he wanted to evoke the notion of the Republic in Pandora. This hypothesis is coherent with both the treatment of the song in Pandora and the moment at which the quotation occurs. Gerard modified the rhythm but integrated the whole music of the song to represent Dulcinea and Don Quixote, as we will hear now. In Pandora, he uses only the final part of the song, and while in Don Quixote the melody was only played by the English horn, the melody is played by almost all the instruments in Pandora. This short motif is also repeated in a sequence that accelerates with a crescendo. Let's listen to this passage in Pandora. This treatment suggests a fragmentation of the musical material, which implies a destruction of the song. This kind of destruction is quite appropriate since the song is quoted in the fourth movement of the suite during the war between the monsters and humanity. Therefore, the evocation of the Republic during the war episode in Pandora through the citation of Asasi per Amor, which represents Dulcinea, can be considered as an evocation of the destruction of the Republic during the Spanish Civil War. The last two songs that Gerard integrated in Pandora are L'Emigrant and La Germana Rescatada. I will discuss these songs at the same time because Gerard merged them together in the score. First, L'Emigrant is a song of nostalgia for the homeland, which is Catalonia. The text retells the main elements of Catalonia's landscape, such as the Pyrenees. After the Civil War, this song became strongly associated with Catalans' exile. In Pandora, Gerard cites only the emblematic motif based on a minor third that opens the verse, as you can see highlighted in blue on the score. Second, La Germana Rescatada is a popular song that tells the story of a girl held captive by a Moorish queen who is afraid that the girl will seduce the king. The young girl is finally saved by her brother, The song is about the imprisonment of an innocent. In Pandora, Gerard uses the short part highlighted in yellow to forge a melody combining the motif from L'Immigrant in ascending sequences with the quotation of La Germana Rescatada. Let's listen to it. This hybrid melody opens the fifth movement, corresponding to the moment after the war with the monsters, when humanity is almost destroyed. The combination of L'Immigrant that evokes exile and La Germana Rescatada that depicts a situation of the imprisonment of an innocent is possibly a strategy to evoke the consequences of the Spanish Civil War for the Catalans, who had to decide whether they were going to follow the path to exile or stay in Catalonia in captivity under Franco's dictatorship. The examination of the use of popular melodies in Pandora sheds new light on Gerard's ballad. The song Gerard chose, as well as the way he inserted them in the score, seems to have been deliberate compositional choices that allowed him to refer to the political context of Catalonia in Spain. Far more than just folkloric or popular allusions, these quotations reveal the composer's interpretation of the scenario. The authoritarian tendency of Pandora is shown through the use of the children's song Anton Pirulero that Gerard manipulates in the score to indicate that the humanity is blindly following the queen as if she was playing an inoffensive game. The historic relationship existing between the form of the Sardana Rosa del Folio and the medieval virelite Almoștem pe Namus, the two songs associated with the heroes, the youth and Psyche, seems to allude to the Renaissance and to the ideas that form the basis of the claims in favor of Catalonia's independence. Furthermore, the allusion to the Libre Vermell of Montserrat could indicate that the ideal symbolized by Psyche is related to the preservation of the democracy in Spain. The characters representing the positive forces in the scenario of Curtius are thus associated with Catalan culture, republicanism, and democracy through Gerard's music. Gerard continues with a self-quotation, revisiting the Assassí per Amor melody he already used in Don Quixote, a work whose political dimension is related to the Catalanist lecture of Cervantes' novel in the play El Català de la Mancha by Santiago de Rusiñol. By quoting this melody during the attack of the monsters, Gerard reinforced its political dimension first elaborated in Don Quixote, where it symbolized an ideal. In Pandora, this ideal is destroyed by monsters, which represent materialism, the mechanization of war, and totalitarianism. One could interpret Gerard's Pandora as a musical symbolization of the Spanish Civil War. The fact that L'Immigrant appears after this moment suggests that the final movement evokes the consequences of the conflict for Catalonia. The combination of L'Immigrant with La Germana Rescatada seems to be a clever way to recall that there were only two possibilities for Catalan people: take the path of exile or stay and resist from within. The music Gerard composed for Pandora thus reveals a political discourse by which he manages to commemorate the Spanish Civil War from a Catalan perspective, emphasizing the importance of democracy over totalitarianism.